Welcome into the RinkWise Podcast. I am your host, Evan Marinofsky, joined today by the great Patrick Donnelly. Pat, what's up?
We're good, Big week ahead and a big week last week. Lots to keep track of these days.
There's a lot. There's a lot.
And we're not even into the busy part.
No, we're not. I was on my ass last week from sickness. Oh, Wednesday through like Sunday, Monday-ish. I don't know if I had the flu. I don't know if it was COVID. I don't know what it was, but it felt weird not going to games. Wednesday night came around, didn't go to a game. Friday, Saturday didn't go to games. I felt like naked. I felt like I should be somewhere, and you were out, thankfully, at stuff. And that's why I want to start with girls prep. You were at Williston and Andover. Williston escapes with a win. They continue to be undefeated. What'd you like? What'd you think?
I mean, that was a great game. We talked about Williston and Dexter being maybe the game of the year, and 0-0 game kind of knocks it.
I was gonna say
Th
the 0-0 game kind of takes it out of the game of the
this
year
was
category.
maybe the most high-level game I've seen all season. Excellent game. I think Livia Farabee made 39 saves for Williston. They were on the ropes for a while there. Marie Lee only made like 18 or 19 saves for Andover, but they were all very high quality saves, each one. Um, it was a great goalie duel, great chances both ways. Obviously, some of the most talented rosters in the entire region, and it did not disappoint. It was an awesome game.
And so, obviously Williston stays number one after that. But what else are you looking at? Because there's only 2 weeks left until brackets are released for the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, Andover, we've kind of talked about them like, laying in the weeds a little bit as a 5 seed. Um, I sure would not want to see them if they stay as the 5th seed, which they're projected to. And whoever that 4th seed ends up being, whether it's Nobles or Loomis Chaffee, I would want nothing to do with Phillips Andover. I've talked about their top six before, and one of the things that maybe got them a little bit against Wilson is Andover leans so heavily on those top two lines, and the third line gets mixed in a little bit. Where Williston, also leans on its top two lines, but I think their third line gets a little more ice than Andover's normally would. So you have to wonder about depth and fatigue as a game like that wears on. Obviously, in overtime, it's the best players playing, so like the depth wasn't a factor. Um, that's just one thing to think about with Andover. And like in net, they haven't had Avery Roadheffer for most of the season. It's been Marie Lee for the vast chunk of it. Young freshman, she's a 2010, like very quick, didn't get phased at all. I sent you. She posted the highlight herself of her save on Nora Curtis, which probably the save of the year.
With some
Um,
EDM music in the background. I
I
clicked
know,
on that. I love the little addition to the music. It's great.
yeah. Um, but yeah, Wilson, like so you look at Andover, you look at that, and whether it's the depth and the amount of high end talent they have, or the goaltending too, where just at their best, again, you could say this about any of the top five teams, but at their best, who's beating them? Obviously Williston did, and it looked like Andover was at their best. It took 1-0 in overtime. But you talk about the depth for Williston in overtime. It's not Nora Curtis. It's not Violet Carroll. Mia Daly makes most of the play, but it's Zola Pikarski who's, putting it home on the rebound. Unbelievable play by Mia Daly to bat the rebound out of midair back to the front of the net. Um, and Pikarski's there on a good net drive to put it home. And that's what it was going to take to beat Marie Lee in that game. And Andover had their own chances. Olivia Farabee, that was the best game I've seen her play, and she's obviously a highly touted goaltender, committed to Cornell. She's won rings at Williston, obviously a great goaltender. But I've never seen her tested like that, and she was fantastic. Just it was a firing squad, especially in the second period. Things opened up. Andover was more than content to play run and gun, especially since Williston couldn't really sustain anything in the second period. And it felt like a matter of time, but she was awesome.
My worry for Williston is it's hard to beat teams twice in a very small span when you're two top teams. And obviously Williston is in a league of its own. They've been, the best team in girls prep all year. But I'm hard. I remember back last year with boys, Brunswick and Salisbury played against each other in the final week or two of the season. Brunswick won. and Brunswick was the higher seed going to the Elite Eight. They meet in a 3v6 matchup, and Salisbury wins because it's just the nature of the beast. The two close teams like that play two times, you're often going to get different results. And I do wonder if they end up somehow meeting in the Elite Eight tournament. I wonder if it's a different result given how close that win was. So I think that's a legitimate concern if you're Williston. And then some of the other teams, Thayer's in a big final week. Cushing's in a weird spot. What do you make of that next tier of teams in the Elite Eight?
Yeah, so Thayer's really interesting because they're in the Elite Eight right now. I think they're 7, but they're projected to finish as the number 1 in the large school.
By the
Um,
way, I got a kick out of someone commented on our podcast last week and was like, "It." They're like 2 days later, and it's so much of it already has changed because the Elite Eight and the playoffs, the picture, it's always changing.
yeah. So you look at they've dropped 2 of their last 3. There's the loss to St. Paul's 2 weeks ago, and then this week they lose a barn burner with Lawrence Academy. And Lawrence is a pesky team. They're going to be in the small school tournament, but that's a tough one to lose if you're there, especially in such a tight race like this. Um, and you look at their schedule the rest of the way. They got Nobles this Friday, Groton and BB&N next week to close things out. Um, so for a team that's still in it, probably still in control of their own destiny, but to have that type of finishing stretch after such a crucial loss over the weekend, isn't great. And you look at, I don't think USHR feels great about them either with the math. Um, but if you can pick up, especially BB&N's projected to finish ahead of them and Nobles too. Like, so if you say you pick up 2 or 3 wins, especially against the teams ahead of you, or you take care of business against BB&N and Groton and get a little help outside, then things probably bode well. But they're really interesting, and it's like kind of like Cushing, not a great time to be um, faltering, but as we said, unpredictable is the nature of the season right now. Um, so yeah, they're in a key spot. And then you look at Cushing, who is 2-4-1 since January 29th. Those losses have been to BB&N, Loomis, Andover, and Nobles. All teams there, any of those teams they could see in the tournament. We've talked about, their losses this season. They've come against those Elite Eight teams, and you just have to wonder what that means for them once the tournament starts. They're probably safely in. I think they're 6 right now. They're projected to finish 7th. They do have a little bit of a tough schedule to finish. They have Dexter and Deerfield this week.
Wow.
And the next week they get Milton, Tilton, and Choate. So they should be able to handle that. But especially this weekend, say you drop both games, then all of a sudden the alarm bells are ringing. Or if you lose to Deerfield, who's behind you, that would be probably pretty concerning. And like just kind of what I mentioned, where we've talked about in the past, like I said, their losses, and it's hard to beat a team twice or 3 times in a season. We talked about that with the Beanpot. Um,
That's
you know,
right.
in a season, let alone in a 2-week span. So, Cushing though, the thing with them is they have the offense to be able to, explode for 5-6 goals in a game and win a track meet. Um, so you do wonder about what sort of matchup they get in the Elite Eight. And BB&N, who we talked about last week, who it feels like it's that race for the 8th spot. BB&N, Thayer, Groton, Deerfield, maybe Cushing after the end of this week, where that's kind of been a revolving door. BB&N, after really being on the ropes for a little while there in January, they won 4 straight. They lost to Nobles over the weekend, but last week they still picked up wins at St. George's, who's going to be in the small school tournament, and they big overtime win at Cushing after they lost by 1 goal to Cushing a couple weeks ago. All of a sudden, they're projected to finish 6th in the Elite Eight. So a huge week for them, and their schedule coming up. Tabor's been a spoiler this year. They get that on Wednesday. Then Lawrence, Middlesex, and then next week to finish things off, Friday, Saturday, you go Thayer and Williston. And that matchup against Thayer on Friday could be make or break for either team, which would be incredibly high stakes.
I was gonna say that is a huge matchup coming up. And even when you look at sort of the current versus the projected Elite Eight, Williston, Dexter, 1 and 2, but the current and projected are different 3 through 8 because you have Loomis and Nobles are currently 3-4, but they're projected to, to flip flop. Andover's still 5, and then the bottom 3, they just kind of reshuffle the deck. Do you see a Groton or a Deerfield or a team outside of that Elite Eight getting in?
It's it's tough for Deerfield. I don't know if I love like their odds. Berkshire's been sort of in that Tabor territory of large school teams that have played spoiler this year. They beat them over the weekend, so that's a tough hit for Deerfield. Um, and this week they have Cushing. Then you have a couple of chances to build some momentum with Kent and Hotchkiss. But then you look at their 1-2 to finish the season next Wednesday, Saturday, Williston and Loomis. Um, so any win there would be huge. Couple that with a win over Cushing, maybe that vaults them in it. But it's hard to like their odds. Groton, I think, is really interesting because they're out of it right now. They're number one in the small school, projected to be in there at 8. They just lost to Nobles over the weekend. That's everybody's losing to Nobles these days. They've hit 21 wins, I think. They've won like 19 or 18 straight, something crazy like that.
I was gonna
That
say
might,
they shut up the rankings.
yeah. So you lose to Nobles, snaps your kind of heater there, but you look at their schedule the rest of the way, and aside from Thayer, it goes Brooks, St. George's, Thayer, and St. Mark's. You know, Obviously you don't want to overlook anyone, in St. George's as a quality team in the small school bracket, but I mean it looks pretty favorable if Groton can win out or pick up a win at Thayer. It, the schedule's kind of aligning for them.
I was gonna say that game against Thayer is probably their biggest chance to get in, and obviously USHR must have them winning that game. Other big matchups this week. What do you have your eye on going forward?
Yeah, so I mean, I know Nobles and Loomis are projected to flip flop by the end, but the top five's been set. It feels like it's going to stay set, and everything kind of goes on out through 6, 7, 8. But you still, big litmus tests all around. You've got Nobles at Andover. Dexter's safely in, but New Hampton is, I think, all but out of it. But just looking ahead to the small school tournament, if they've given teams tests here, and obviously they're a very good roster, an Elite Eight caliber roster. So big matchup there at Dexter, or Dexter going to them. Tabor, like we've talked about plenty. Tabor gets BB&N and Nobles, and I'm sure those would be two teams they'd love to just throw a wrench into their plans
Oh yeah.
for. So the same kind of goes for, Deerfield and Cushing. Like we said, that's a must win for Deerfield. BB&N and Tabor, like I already said that. Thayer and Nobles, that's a huge litmus test for Thayer, and if they can, pull out a win or get it to overtime, or something to help your math, that would be huge. Cushing at Dexter, another big litmus test for Cushing, and then Loomis and Williston, a top 3 matchup, at least for me. USHR thinks it'll be a top 4 matchup, but that'll be another big test for both teams. Which, it's that level of a Williston Dexter, Williston Andover, Williston Nobles type of matchup where it's the best of the best.
Are you serious about playing your sport in college? Do you need a flexible education that allows you to maintain your practice and competition schedules while also preparing you to succeed at the next level? You should check out the University of Nebraska High School. UNHS is accredited and offers more than 100 online courses, including NCAA-approved courses to protect your academic eligibility. Students can earn a UNHS diploma or take a single course for transfer credit. Courses are college prep, self-paced, and available 24/7, 365. Enroll anytime and take up to a year to complete a course. Visit highschool.nebraska.edu today.
So I say, go top shelf, upper 90s, right under the crossbar. Any questions?
Professor, the NCAA lacrosse championships are coming to Boston. Are we ready?
You prepared to get loud, face paint up, bring boom boom to Beantown? Oh, you're ready. The NCAA D1, D2, and D3 men's and D1 women's lacrosse championships, May 23rd through the 26th in Boston. Buy your seats today at ncaa.com/tickets.
What I like a lot about girls prep is it seems like the top teams play each other at the end of the year. They beef up their schedules at the end. You get these high end matchups, even across conferences. It's, you're just, trying to play the best teams there at the end. Why don't we move on to boys prep? Take over, Pat.
Yeah, so big week for Cushing, as you wrote in your rankings. Wins over Brunswick, St. Mark's, and they're making a push for the Elite Eight.
They are. I didn't see this. I didn't foresee this. They had been sort of struggling. I don't even know if struggling is the right word. They just were
Treading
sort of
water.
yeah, they were treading. They were in choppy waters. The head was just
A little
above
bit of chop.
the surface, like they were just about to go under. And, they beat Kimball Union in late January, which kind of rose my eyebrows. But of late, they tied Tilton, and then they won 4 straight: Vermont Academy, Brunswick, St. Mark's, and Canterbury. The last 3, Brunswick and St. Mark's. I mean, Brunswick, I think, was the number 4 or 5 team I had last week. St. Mark's was number 2. So to get those 2 wins was huge. Got great goaltending from backup Zach White, senior. He came in. Max Korvik's been sick, so Zach White's been kind of handling the most minutes in net, and he was phenomenal against Brunswick, phenomenal against St. Mark's. And they're just sort of stringing wins together. And I know Ryan Bork has been big on getting hot at the end of the year, playing your best hockey at the end of the year. And it seems like they are. Now, are they going to get in? That's the big question. As of right now, they're the number 8 in the Elite Eight. Projected, they are not. Projected, they are the number 5 seed in the small school. So USHR and the algorithm see them having a rough stretch coming up. They have Andover on Wednesday. They have Kimball Union on Saturday. They have New Hampton on February 26th, and they end the year with Govs on March 1st. I don't necessarily agree with the algorithm, unless it's based on what other teams are doing. And if other teams have the edge over Cushing and they win their games, then Cushing gets pushed to the small school. But I don't know. Andover has been up and down of late. Kimball Union has been struggling. I would expect Cushing to beat New Hampton. Governors has been good and a real spoiler, but I would probably pick Cushing in that game. So it wouldn't shock me if Cushing found its way in, which a couple weeks ago, I think when we did the Elite Eight forecast, I don't even think they were on it. I don't think they were in the
I don't recall.
JSPR. So, they weren't, because I remember writing a thing for Cushing, and then the JSPR changed and they were kicked out. So it's like, all right, well, there's no point in even putting this in here. But they've been getting a ton of scoring from Max Deneen, leads the team in 47 points. Joseph Kovaluzzi, an 09, has been, one of the big breakout guys in prep. I wrote about him as a potential NTDP kid, on Monday. And, their defense is really good. I still don't think they've gotten the production that they probably thought they were going to get out of the back end and from up front, but they're finding ways to win. I have not seen Cushing, by the way, since opening night. Isn't that crazy? Typically Cushing's a team you see, and it's not because, they're not in the Elite Eight picture as much. It's more so just because the way the schedule's worked. I'm going to see them this week, either against Andover or Kimball Union, because, again, they've sort of emerged back into the fray.
I wonder about Andover, where it has Andover in and Cushing not in. I'm wondering if it looks at that Andover game and, that's basically for the Elite Eight.
I think it might be. I think that is what it sees. Because, again, it has Cushing finishing 18-9-2. So it sees them losing 2 more times. Andover, they have finishing at 18-8-3. Andover does not have, that means Andover would win out the rest of their schedule. And when you look at Andover's, the remaining schedule, Cushing, it has them winning that game. Brooks, Pingree, Northfield, Mount Herman, and Exeter. Those are all games that Andover should win outside of the Cushing one. But I agree. I think that game probably is the biggest indicator of who gets into the Elite Eight. And I don't think that's going to be easy. Andover has to go into Cushing. Andover was, I think it was a couple weeks ago, was firmly in the Elite Eight, but was projected to be not in the Elite Eight. And we were kind of scratching our heads why is that the case? And it was because of this stretch that they just went through: Deerfield, Belmont Hill, Dexter, Kimball Union, Governors, and they finish it off with Cushing. And the algorithm was correct with the first 3 games. They lost to Deerfield, they lost to Bell Hill, and they lost to Dexter. But they upset Kimball Union, back up Edward Lord came in, made a 37 save shutout. I was actually supposed to go to that game, but the flu was not my Michael Jordan flu game was not going to be that one. Um, but they have been getting scoring from Graydon Robertson Palmer and Rui Han. Those two have been sort of the heartbeat of this team. And then they have, a lot of great depth pieces who've been chipping in offensively. They're good on D. So again, they should take care of business with those remaining 4 games. It comes down to Cushing. And it seems like the algorithm, USHR, thinks that it's going to take care of business with those. And it would be impressive for Andover to get into the Elite Eight. Given sort of I always kind of pictured them as a good, solid, large school team, even after winning the Floodmar, but they seem to be proving me wrong. And just like Cushing, they're back in the mix.
Yeah, Andover seems like it's in a similar spot as Groton on the girls' side, where there's that one big matchup and everything else kind of is opening the lane for them.
That's what it feels like.
Yeah, because I compared them. Groton's projected to win out 2, and Thayer's projected to lose twice. So very similar spots for Groton and Andover.
That's the exact same thing. They have Cushing losing 2 more times and Andover winning out.
And so Thayer has, BB&N, Groton, and Nobles. Maybe it assumes it's losing to Groton and Nobles. But either way, very similar situations. KUA, who could play spoiler for Cushing this week, they're probably out.
It looks that way. Projected, they're out. Current Elite Eight, they're out. By out, I mean they're out of the Elite Eight. They're a high seed in the small school. I think this year actually could be like the most competitive, best small school tournament. Definitely since I've been covering prep hockey, which is the last 3 years. The projected small school bracket is Rivers, Kimball Union, Berkshire, Holderness, Cushing, St. George's, Tilton, and Groton. That is a wrecking crew. Like, usually the small school's a little bit weaker. That's a ridiculous field. And Kimball Union, I had them up in the top 4 like all year up until recent. They've been hit by the injury bug. They've been up and down. They lost. It was a weird week for them. They lost to Andover, 4-0, and then they lose to Holderness 7-2, which is odd. They beat Holderness 5-2 about a week and a half ago, and I thought to myself, all right, Kimball Union is going to make a fight for the Elite Eight. They should be in it. And then they go and lose to Holderness. Now, I have Holderness at 10 this week. Holderness is likely going to be a small school tournament team, a higher seed in the small school, and probably not going to be moving into the Elite Eight, just given their remaining schedule. They play Winchendon, Vermont Academy, St. Paul's. They do play Dexter on the last game of the season, though, which could be interesting because if they win the rest of their games and then they beat Dexter and then they do well in the Lakes Region playoffs, like, I don't know how they stay out of the Elite Eight if that were the case, because they do only have 4 losses. And those losses came to Tilton, New Hampton, Governors, and Kimball Union. So, excuse me. So they have, they've been a spoiler. They were a spoiler for KUA. So they knocked out maybe their biggest rival from being an Elite Eight team, which is huge. Again, it's going to be weird to see Kimball Union in the small school potentially. But I would say that, they're probably the favorite out of that crew. Kimball Union's remaining schedule, they have Proctor on Wednesday. They have Cushing on Saturday. And then they go directly into the Lakes Region tournament. So they have some time off before that tournament starts in the final weekend of the regular season. So usually that Lakes Region tournament can sometimes help solidify the Elite Eight. I remember, I think it was 2 years ago, KUA won the Lakes Region tournament, and they snuck in as the 8th seed into the Elite Eight. I don't know if that happens this year. That's going to be difficult. I think it's probably going to more so impact the small school tournament. But a surprise. Nonetheless, it's a weird year, Pat, because Kimball Union's out of it right now. Avon Old Farms seems to safely be a large school team after they've had a slew of losses of late. They've lost to, let me pull it up. They've lost 5 of their last 7 games. Loomis, Berkshire, Westminster, Hotchkiss, and Deerfield all lost. So they went from like the number 2 team in the region to basically being out of it and a top seed in the large school. And then I don't know. We'll see if Cushing gets in or not. But weird year where these powers are not the favorites.
So something interesting I just noticed, because you mentioned the Lakes Region playoffs, and obviously those games aren't set yet. So the algorithm. So Kimball Union right now 26-2. And they're projected to finish 22-6-2, but they have 2 more games in the Lakes Region playoffs. So that would make it's not, the algorithm isn't factoring in the Lakes Region playoffs because those games aren't on the schedule yet.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. They're not. That's odd. They're not.
So, like, if you get another win over Holderness or a Tilton or 2 wins over those teams,
you also beat Cushing if that held, then yeah. Maybe they get in.
Yeah.
Like maybe that is the surprise. You're right. That's a great catch because it doesn't factor in the Lakes region. Can't factor in the Lakes region.
Yeah, because they have at least 4 games left and it only has them winning 2 more and nothing else happening.
That's right. There you go. Good catch. You were maybe you weren't listening to what I was saying, but you were doing better things. You're doing more important things. It's
true. I put on my Big J journalism hat.
That is a Big J journalism
investigative
hat. As I'm over here coughing. I do think you're right, though. And so that's an interesting thing that doesn't factor in the Lakes Region playoffs. So if let's say Kimball Union played like Tilton and Holderness and won those games, those are both higher ranked teams. Those are big wins. If Kimball Union
couple that with a win or competitive loss at Cushing, and
maybe they're in. Maybe you're right. So then all right. So let's look at the projected Elite 8. Then who would come out? So you look like, is Salisbury knocked out? Is Andover the team that's knocked out? If this all happens for Kimball Union, is Nobles? So I think it makes things interesting. You're right. You have to consider Kimball Union more heavily than we did 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of got into my next point where you look at the projected and top 3, Dexter, Deerfield, St. Mark seems pretty set. That's what it is now. That's what's projected to finish. But that's where then things become interesting because Belmont Hill, Brunswick, and Nobles are all supposed to get in. Belmont Hill and Nobles are supposed to flip-flop 4 and 6. Brunswick stays at 5. And then Salisbury, Andover, 7-8. And you add in the wrinkles of Cushing and Kimball Union.
It doesn't make it easy for these teams, especially low in the Elite 8. There are some really interesting matchups this week that I think are going to have a big implication on this. The first is Brunswick and Salisbury play on Wednesday. 2 Elite 8 teams right now. Salisbury just lost in overtime to Westminster, so they're kind of just hanging on to the Elite 8. Brunswick had a tough loss to Cushing, but then they rebounded and got 2 wins. They took down Frederick-Gunn and Berkshire. So that also probably puts Berkshire in the small school playoffs because they lost to Kent and Brunswick last week. But so that's a huge game for Salisbury, especially. Brunswick, I believe, would still be in, just be a lower seed if they lost to Salisbury. But for Salisbury, that's a really big game. Those 2 teams always play each other late in the season, and somehow, at least last year, they ended up meeting in the playoffs, as I mentioned earlier. St. Mark's is safely 3 now, but they play Rivers on Wednesday. Now, Rivers is a top 10 team for me. Rivers, as of right now, would be. I keep pulling up. I have the girls' playoff seeding stuff. I keep being like, "Where's Rivers?"
Small school.
That's right. Rivers is number 1 team in the small school right now. Projected to also finish there. USHR has them losing, I believe, we assume it's to St. Mark's this week. But if they win that game, they're probably in the Elite 8. And St. Mark's wouldn't move out of the Elite 8. I think that St. Mark's would just move down a bit. I went to their first game of the year, which was at Rivers. I think it was a 4-3 game. It was a close game. Like, I would not be shocked if that's another tight one, or if Rivers pulls off the upset. I don't know if it's that huge of an upset, but be a big win for Rivers if they could pull that off. Then you have, as we mentioned already, Andover and Cushing on Wednesday. I have no idea what I'm going to do Wednesday, by the way. Brunswick and Salisbury's far. I think, unfortunately, that's probably crossed off. Maybe I'll watch it online. But Rivers and St. Mark's and then Andover and Cushing are two phenomenal games that are going to have big Elite Eight implications. And then Friday you have Nobles and Bell Hill, which is a huge rivalry game. And they're both in the Elite Eight right now. Nobles trying to move up, Belmont Hill trying to keep itself as one of the top seeds. So that's going to be a huge game. And then you have Kimball Union and Cushing on Saturday, as we just kind of talked about. That's big for Kimball Union, to try to shimmy its way back into the Elite Eight picture. And then, excuse me, Salisbury and Avon. Salisbury and Avon, which are two powerhouse programs. That's Saturday at 3. Salisbury's trying to hang on to an Elite Eight spot. Avon would like to play spoiler, and if they can win, maybe they get back into that Elite Eight field. Although I doubt it, given the losses they have. So it's a big week of games, and I am assuming when people are listening to this on Thursday morning, potentially, like, things could have changed quite a bit, but I feel like we did our best to sort of give a well-rounded view of where things are at for boys.
I think so. Boys MIAA.
Boys MIAA.
Brackets coming out this week. Regular
Isn't it
season
exciting?
ending.
It's wild. It feels earlier. It's earlier than last year, isn't it?
I mean, I was looking. Last year was the 23rd. This year is the 22nd. It's the same.
So it's earlier. I said it. It's earlier. There you go. It's earlier.
I mean, we talked about it in our magazine planning last week. The NEPSAC is the one who's late this year. That's what makes everything feel so weird.
That's right.
Yeah, these were the same weekend last year, pretty much the same weekend, give or take. They
did. It was.
It was 1 week after. Wasn't it?
No, it was the same weekend. They released one release Saturday, one release Sunday. MIAA and NEPSAC back-to-back days, releasing their brackets, and then the reason we got to do so much MIAA late in the playoffs was because prep was done in a week.
Yes.
So after that week, we had all MIAA to do, and this year it won't be the case. We'll still be doing a lot of MIAA, obviously, but I don't know if it'll be as much as we got out of last year. But
yes, take a break on your local writers putting gas in their cars.
That's right.
Staying up late.
That's right. Please give us a break. It's interesting. I mean, the bracket comes out. It's Saturday, right? This Saturday?
Yes.
It comes out. So that'll be really exciting. All 4 boys and 2 girls. It's always fun to sort of look and go, where are the upsets? Last year, number 5 Archbishop Williams lost to number 28 Weymouth. I think that was the only true big upset of the first round. I wouldn't be shocked, and we'll probably do kind of like a bracket breakdown video next week, but wouldn't shock me if there were more upsets this year. Feels like that's kind of the tone.
Yeah, I mean, one of the teams that we've been talking about a lot recently, Catholic Memorial, didn't seem like a factor a couple weeks ago, but all of a sudden they're peaking at the right time.
They are hitting their stride. I mean, they just beat Pope Francis in overtime at Pope Francis, huge win. Prior to that, their wins came against Archie, St. John's Prep, and Hingham, which is like a gauntlet. So if that's if you're coming out 4-0 from that, that is really freaking impressive. MIAA has not released power rankings since the 14th. So there are results in there that they have not factored in, obviously. I'm very curious to see. I don't think CM will be like number 1. Pope Francis has done too much. To me, Pope is the clear number 1 team. But are they 2? I would assume probably. They just beat St. John's Prep. They also beat Hingham. They beat Pope. So if you're going into the tournament with likely Pope, CM, St. John's Prep, and I would assume either BC High or Hingham as like the top 4 seeds, it's an interesting field. BC High has risen in recent weeks. Hingham stumbled a little bit, but still, to me, probably the top public. But it's much closer than prior years. So if those are your top seeds and CM is gunning the way that they're gunning, all year they look to me to be a really young team. Like, all right, good for them. They're having a good run. Probably this will be important for next year when they really hit their stride. And your Jackson Nelson is a 9th grader and different forwards are older and your D are a little bit older. They seem to be hitting it now. And if they're hitting it now, like, do they just keep staying hot? I mean, we see this every year. These teams that get hot at the end of the year kind of just continue to do it throughout the playoffs. I do wonder if that's what's happening with CM. Now, it's not a surprise. They're going to be a top seed. So it's like they're not, surprising anybody. But coming into the year, I remember talking to a lot of MIAA people and just kind of being like, what's CM going to be? They lost so many people. They've lost so many people over the last 2 years. Like, what's that, are they going to be able to replace talent? And head coach Larry Rooney's done a great job. I mean, they're back in it. So it's going to be an interesting field. And I don't want to, we've talked a lot about like Belmont and Arlington of late. So I don't want to dive too deep into that. And we'll probably break the bracket down more in depth next week. But it's pretty clear who the 3 or 4 top seeds are going to be. I'm not going to make a prediction yet. I did say on the TV show that comes out this Friday that I think it's going to be Pope and like one of the lower end top 10 teams in the Garden. So I'm gonna hold to that, like a St. Mary's or a Zavarian, or like at the time CM was more down there, someone like that, a Belmont. That's my I think if I had to make a prediction, probably be like Belmont and Pope, but we'll see. We'll see. I'm not gonna make that final. I'm just saying it. I'm just thinking out loud. Not making that official.
You're just trying really hard to throw our jinx at teams.
That's right. That's right. I should know. If I'm going to jinx anyone, it's St. Mary's Lynn. That was the team that beat me in the Garden. So, you know what? St. Mary's Lynn, they win the championship this year. There it is. That's final. I saw the script.
All right,
they
clip
won.
this.
Yep, clip it. St. Mary's Lynn, MIAA Division I champions for boys. How incredible. Good for them. Girls MIAA. New power rankings are out. Westwood stays atop Division II, even after losing to Hingham. That's odd.
I'm surprised, so now they're 17-1-1. You look at Duxbury, who's 13-5-2. And those couple extra losses are probably holding Duxbury out. But again, what we've talked about all season long with Duxbury is the experience, the depth, the pace they play, and the opponent rating compared to pretty much everyone else in
everybody
Division II,
else,
except for Longmeadow, of course.
That's right. We love Longmeadow. They have a tough schedule.
Longmeadow. Duxbury's opponent rating 0.9866, and Westwood's is in the negatives by a couple decimal points. But I think Westwood showed a lot yesterday against Hingham. I was down at the first day of the Hingham Showcase, which continues today and Thursday. So we're recording this on Tuesday. So it continues Tuesday and Thursday, and things could continue to change. The 3 games I saw were Archie's and Arlington, Duxbury and St. Mary's, and Hingham and Westwood. And Hingham and Westwood was 4-2, but man, Westwood gave him hell, and really had a chance early on to kind of upend that game. And even again after start of the, I think second or third period, I think the third period, because they scored late in the second to cut it to 2-1, and they have life, and they come out firing in the third period just like they did at the start. Bit of a fire drill for Hingham, but. I'll give Westwood credit because, we talk about strength of schedules and how good Hingham's been and how dominant their top 6 is, especially Caroline Doherty, who had a hat trick, and Addie Garrity hit 100 points on her career. So 2 good players to be going against if you're Westwood. And they gave them hell, and they really hung in there and, had a chance to win. So, that kind of opened my eyes up for Westwood a little bit. Even though they're undefeated, the team you haven't seen, strength of schedule, you're like, yeah, okay. No, I think they're in a good spot, and I still probably, might give the edge to Duxbury, just, for all the reasons I've said before. But I think Westwood, obviously, as the number 1 seed, is going to be a major factor. But, great game for them yesterday, even despite the loss. But yeah, it seems like things are pretty set, it seems. 1 and 2 in D2, Westwood and Duxbury, that hasn't moved. Woburn, Algonquin, Marshfield, Milton, and Auburn, they've all kind of been jockeying in that next tier. I think Auburn slipped a little bit of late. But, even then, Falmouth is creeping its way up. They were outside the top 10 a little recently. Then they were 10th, I think, last time we checked. Now they're 9th, so they're kind of creeping their way up. And, D1's kind of been set for, I don't know, a month now. Hingham won, barring anything unforeseen at the end of the Hingham Showcase. Looks like they're going to be 1. NDA, big win over Braintree yesterday. They're 2. They're 3 for me in my rankings, but they've been 2 here for a while. MC has been 3 for a while. North Andover, Haverhill, Pentucket, they've been 4 for a while. Archie's has been 5. Methuen 6. That's all kind of been set in stone. Now behind them has been kind of jockeying a little bit between Bishop Fee, Billerica, Belmont, Andover. And we can get into upsets, but Arlington I thought looked great yesterday against Archie's, and talk about giving a team hell. Like went to overtime, looked like we might have needed a second overtime as the day was going to get further delayed.
Every time you go to a girls MIAA event, it always there's something that delays it. I remember
So
last year that first game of the championship day completely threw the whole day off.
yeah, Arlington and Archie started late. It went to overtime, almost needed second overtime. And then between that, the ice is all done. The refs are on the ice. The coaches are on the benches. The teams are ready to come out for St. Mary's and Duxbury. Zamboni doors are just open for half an hour. And the game is already late. It was supposed to start at 1:15. It's already well past. And it's like we're just sitting there wondering what the heck is going on here. And it was a broken pane of glass that I don't know when it happened or what, but they come out and they fix it. Finally, we start the game, and then there's just all these sorts of little things that once you're kind of keyed up, they all just kind of add up for you.
They add up. It's just, it snowballs. You're like, oh my God. And the Wi-Fi was awful in that rink, right?
I was like the only person in that rink who couldn't get a cell phone connection. Like, I don't know.
That's
I
the
don't know
worst.
what it is.
People don't realize when we're in there forever and you can't go online, you can't do anything on your phone, you can't text, can't call. It's like you're just secluded from the world.
Yeah, and I could send a couple SMS texts here and there. I'm the slob with the green bubbles.
That's right.
But I'm standing next to Mike Puzangara from the Globe, and he's tweeting and texting A-OK. Doesn't even need the Wi-Fi, and I can't get even like a shred of outside interaction. And I finally get a Wi-Fi password. It doesn't connect. It was the right password, but I can't get my phone. It's clearly a me problem. But I was in there for
never your fault. It's never our fault.
And I could have gone out to my car, but then it's not immediate. So then you're waiting 5 minutes. You've already wasted time. Zamboni's coming off the ice. So I just had to just figured I'd stick it out and, really pay attention to the games, God forbid.
That's right. I know. God forbid we do our jobs and we can't be on Twitter the whole time. I always joke that people must see me at games and think like, oh, he's on his phone the entire game. But I take notes on my phone. Yes. I always joke people must think I'm just like ripping through Twitter like the entire game, even though I can't because there's never any service in like any rink.
Yeah. No, I used to be a handwritten notes guy, but if you're in there for all day, kind of like yesterday, your hands get so cold, you're just writing scribbles at that point.
Yeah.
And then especially if I'm trying to juggle a camera, then I have to put the notebook down. I have to put the camera up. It's just easier with my phone to do the notes app. And plus, when I'm writing, I can just Command F a number or a name, and it's all right there. So
what I tell you when you started, I said that exact. I said Command F is going to be your best friend. You can look it up and.
But anyways, not to let that snowball overshadow. It was a great day of hockey. We were talking about Arlington. Arlington is currently 17 in D1, and like Westwood did for Hingham, they gave Archie's hell. Their top center and top right winger, Kelsey Partridge, and I'm blanking on the other name, but they were disturbers. They were speedy. They were all over the puck in the offensive zone. Generated plenty of chances in every situation. They had a couple shorthanded looks. They were good on the power play. Arlington has size on the back end too, and their goalie, she was phenomenal. She played a great game. She was quick. She read the play, anticipated. Rebounds were kind of iffy, but she made the save she needed to make, and it took two pretty perfect shots to beat her in the third and in overtime. And they had the lead at first too. They went up 1-0 before Archie's came back and won 2-1. So that was a great game. And St. Mary's too, their top line. We talked about Alyssa Norden and Kira Toomey a lot with Bella Freitas last year, and Emma Doucette, the sixth grader, who you would never know is a sixth grader.
Insane. Did you say she's the class of 2031?
I almost died this morning writing the class of 2031.
My God. That scares the hell out of me.
You would never know. She looks the part, she's just as big as everyone else. Super smart player. Scored a goal, and she can rip the puck. You can see the potential, especially, as she gets stronger. Things will start to click. So
she's
that was
2011? No. 2012?
Like a 2012.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
She's been in the news. Like WCVB did something with her. Like the Globe did something. She's like 12 years old. It's insane. To be doing what she's doing
insane.
As a first liner playing varsity in sixth grade and looking like you belong.
I can't get over it. I have to get out and see this. That is a crazy thing to me. Just
Yeah.
plain crazy.
Like, she's got to be like 5'5". Like, she blends right in with everybody. You would never know.
It's so impressive. 6th grader. Is that the youngest ever?
I mean, it's got to be close. Like,
Can't go
you
younger
know,
than
you
that,
think about
can
these
you?
private schools that also have middle schools. Along the way, there's probably been a 7th or an 8th grader, or even like some publics that have kids play up. Because I think last year's Chloe Rabazi or Kylie, one's on Rivers, one's still at Burlington. I think she was a 7th grader, and I wrote about her as class of 2030, and same reaction.
Just bananas.
Yeah.
Well, there we go. Well, we've done a nice little look around at prep and MIAA. We're winding down the regular season, but that just means the postseasons. We're going to be gearing up for that. For over 20 years, Eric Nate's Euro Hockey has been helping hockey players of all ages develop their individual skills and improve on all aspects of their game. Through structured drills and innovative training equipment, Eric Nate's Euro Hockey's intense on-ice instruction challenges each student to be the best at their ability. Find a hockey clinic or summer camp that is right for you today at nateshockey.com. That's NATES hockey.com. Eric Nate's Euro Hockey, train to be the best.
Do you want to become a better hockey player this summer with Paul Vincent Hockey? Since 1972, Paul Vincent, currently the head skills instructor of the Florida Panthers, has been developing NHL and college hockey players. Paul Vincent stands by his saying, there's always room for player development. Players such as Patrick Kane, Jonathan Taves, Keith Yandel, Matt Grzelcyk, Patrick Sharp, Adam Oates, and many more have trained with Coach Vincent and his staff and have outstanding results. Join Paul Vincent this summer at one of his 4 Massachusetts locations, Canton, Saugus, Middleton, and Falmouth on Cape Cod. To reserve your spot today, go to pvhockey.com or call 978-807-4070. That's pvhockey.com or call 978-807-4070. Paul Vincent is ready to get back to work this summer. Are you?
Do you want to skate fast? For 50 years, Laura Stam instructors have taught youth players to pros how to skate correctly, powerfully, and fast. Players who attend Laura Stam power skating programs learn how to skate fast by learning how to execute every maneuver in hockey. They become powerful, stable, efficient, and explosively fast skaters. If you can't wait for a clinic, join our subscription skills video service, and we'll show you the skills taught at our clinics in an easy-to-use video format with training plans to guide your training. Register or subscribe now at laurastam.com. That's LAURASTAMM.com. You can learn to skate fast.
Before we go, our great producer David Yaz has the famous overtime.
Overtime.
Yes, welcome back to Overtime, where I prepare some questions for our panelists here. And we're going to try something a little different today. According to some reports, gentlemen, soccer has surpassed hockey in terms of popularity in the United States over the last decade or so. Now, I could probably allow you guys to argue that, and I know you would. But let's put some factors to it. So what we're going to do is I'm going to give you 5 different categories, and you need to tell me whether soccer or hockey gets the nod. You'll understand when we get into this. First category, signature film. Miracle versus Bend It Like Beckham. I don't know if this is going to be much of a contest, but Evan, your thoughts?
No contest. Now, granted, I haven't seen Bend It Like Beckham. And the Beckham documentary that Netflix came out with last year was phenomenal. But Miracle is Miracle.
Miracle is,
Nothing touches that. Nothing touches that.
Pat?
So we've talked about it here before, how I've still never seen Miracle.
Oh, no.
Finish. But I haven't seen Bend It Like Beckham, and I've seen enough clips of Miracle where I can probably put it all together.
Have you seen
I don't remember you not seeing Miracle. You haven't seen
we've
Miracle?
talked about it.
Insane. Have you seen Slapshot?
Yeah.
All right, Slapshot versus Bend It Like Beckham.
Slapshot. And I've seen, like I said, I've seen enough YouTube of Miracle to pretty much have it all. And
all right. I started you off with a soft puck. I don't know what you call it. that one definitely goes to hockey, category 1. Category number 2, equipment cost. You have to be honest on this one. Soccer, cleats and a ball. Hockey, skates, helmet, mouth guard, shoulder pads, elbow pads, gloves, hockey pants, shin guards, hockey socks, cup, jersey,
Stick.
sweater, stick. I forgot stick. Yeah.
Sticks are insane now.
Yeah. Well, can we agree that that's one category where soccer might just the ease of entry for a young person?
That's one category that pretty much every single sport has on hockey, except for like
Yep.
something like skiing or maybe golf. But like,
Right.
I think hockey should be more expensive, actually. Make equipment more expensive. Make it harder. It's insane. I mean, it's
Yeah.
the pricing's insane, and that's why, like, it's hard. It's impossible. Not impossible, but it's hard to grow hockey.
Yeah.
Because it's so expensive. What parent, unless you played hockey, it's hard as a parent to want to get yourself ramped up to spend, $300 on a stick and $200 on a helmet and then the ice time, and it's a lot. It's too much.
And there are great like learn to play programs that get little kids gear for free, but then they grow out of it, and then you have to buy it yourself.
Then you're on your own, pal.
Yeah,
Sorry.
and I remember like growing up, like when we were in like middle school and high school, like the top end sticks, like an NXG or whatever, were like 240, 250. Now they're over 300. And like back
They're
then,
around
you could still
400
get
now.
like and you could still get like a pretty good mid-level upper tier stick for $150. But now those are 200, 250. It's crazy.
And it's and it's a whole process. You guys are allowed to laugh at this because it's funny. My son Adrian has autism, and he for a couple years played the special needs hockey team called the Boston Bear Cubs, and it was awesome. And they actually played between periods of a Providence Bruins game. It was kind of a thrill. But in order to play, if we had ice time at 11 a.m., we had to show up at least at 10 to start putting on all the crap. and you got a bunch of these dads with their special needs kids, try to figure out where all the equipment goes. It's a process. It's quite a process.
It is a process.
And
Absolutely.
You're lucky I didn't have odor in the locker room for a category, because hockey would have lost that one too. All right. Well, soccer gets the nod there. It is what it is. Overtime rules. Okay. With soccer, no overtime in most leagues during the regular season. A lot of ties in soccer. In hockey, as you know, sudden death overtime period, followed by a shootout, followed by the rules where you get a point for an overtime loss, etc. Which do you prefer? Pat, you go first on that.
I go hockey because it's easier to understand, I think, because like in soccer, you get to the World Cup and they go to overtime, and you're like, wait, it's not golden goal, or you expect it to be golden goal.
Well, yeah, under some circumstances, of course, they do go to penalty kicks, right? And but I couldn't tell you all the rules about that either. So, but are you on board with? I mean, in the past, there were a lot of ties in hockey, right? I forget what year they changed it, right? But so now, was that an improvement? Let me ask you that.
To now.
Yeah, like now every regular season game has a winner. It might be an overtime win, but it's still a winner. It's still an overtime loss. Do you prefer that to the ties?
I do prefer that. We can get into the minutia of what they should change about overtime. But I do like having a winner.
Yeah. Okay. Evan?
Hockey wins.
Yeah.
Hockey wins. The penalty kick thing stinks. I think soccer. I don't like soccer, but they should change soccer to have maybe bring the nets in. Have maybe half field or small area game of 3-on-3, and first to score wins. That should be what it is. I'm so sick of seeing ties. It's so
that could be interesting. All right, yeah, you got rid of the ties in hockey. I do think that's an improvement because you go to the Boston Garden, you watch the Bruins play for 2.5 hours. You spend half your paycheck, and you go home and the game's a tie. No,
you pay to see a winner.
Yeah,
so pay to see a winner.
Yeah. So I had a friend just get back from Madrid, and he was like, should I go to a Real Madrid game? And we were like, yes. But tickets were like $700.
And imagine
if you pay $700, you shell out $700 to see a tie.
And imagine if it's 0-0. 0-0.
Yeah.
That
and
does
soccer's
happen, sure.
boring in general. So like it's just
So I'll give soccer credit for being way better in person. Because I've been to a couple MLS games and
Interesting.
like it's faster, and there's like on TV it looks like they have so much more time and space than they do. So I'll give them credit, but hockey still dwarfs it.
All right.
For me.
Well, we don't have on-field excitement as a category, so hockey's lucky there. Hockey gets that category. Next category: feat of insane athleticism. The Michigan versus the bicycle kick. You guys can correct me on whether now the Michigan, I believe, is the move where you scoop the puck up on your stick and kind of shove it in, which rarely happens, right? But it does happen.
Happens a lot now.
It's more frequent now. Yeah,
Okay.
I'll go bicycle kick. Bicycle kick is so cool. Like that is the one thing about soccer where it's like, oh my God, like if you can successfully with the I almost said the puck, with the ball in the air and a defender on you and you're back to the net, just throw yourself back and kick it and have it go in. I think that's one of like the coolest things in sports.
Yeah, it kind of is.
I agree, especially where like kind of every kid now can do the Michigan.
Oh yeah.
So it's not it doesn't feel as special.
And bicycle kick, you can get like very injured. You could really mess up your back. Like you're not like landing on your feet doing that. So
yeah, you gotta go all in. All right. Well, it's gonna come down to the last category. This is the final one. Signature tournament, the NHL playoffs versus the World Cup. Evan, you want to go first?
Yeah, I mean, I love the Stanley Cup playoffs. Like, I think it's the best trophy in sports. It's incredible, but the World Cup is huge. Like, if you did Stanley Cup versus like Premier League, I don't even understand how those playoffs work.
There are no playoffs.
Yeah, that's right. The winner of the regular season wins it. You get demoted. I don't get how it works. I don't care. But
North American teams should be relegated.
I agree. The World Cup, though, is hard to beat. And it's global, and everyone's watching. And you see it right now with hockey with Four Nations. You get countries pitted against countries, and it's always good. I hate to say it, because Stanley Cup, to me, is the best playoffs in America in North American sports. But I probably have to go World Cup.
Pat?
I'd echo the same things. You know, the world, like, nothing brings in a casual viewer like the World Cup too, especially like for us where USA has kind of been half decent now. But, you know, everybody felt like everybody was watching Argentina for Messi to see if he can finally get the World Cup. And then imagine, let alone, you know, us casuals watching it, not even having any stake in the matchup, but, you know, the entire country of Argentina just being insane for this game. Like it's on another level.
Well, in this brief experiment here, you guys failed because hockey comes in second to soccer. But just for the heck of it, I'll throw in one bonus category. Signature element of physicality, fighting versus flopping. Is there any contest there?
None.
None. Okay.
No contest, especially if you watched USA Canada the other night.
Although flopping's made its way into hockey. Flopping's definitely made its way into hockey.
Let's keep it out, shall we?
I'd like that.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll call it a draw because I don't want to malign the hockey fans out there. But well done, guys, on overtime. And back to you, Evan, to wrap things up.
One more soccer thought.
Mm-hmm.
I do think when you talk about growing the game, hockey is way more fast-paced, in my opinion, at least on TV. And attention spans are shortening like crazy, especially with kids coming up. Now, our attention spans are cooked. The future generations are cooked when it comes to attention spans. Hockey fits that. Hockey's action-packed, and you're watching, and you have to pay attention. And it's also fairly a quick game. Whereas soccer, it's a little longer. It can look a little slow on TV. That's why I'm surprised. I think this World Cup of Hockey, this Four Nations thing, could help grow hockey a little bit more, where people are like, oh, wait, this is a really cool product. I like watching this. So maybe that is where hockey gets the.
And not only is it faster, but I feel like in hockey, the fate of a team can switch incredibly quickly. You know, you can make a stop in the other team's end, and within less than a second, like have a shot on net on the other side. Whereas in soccer, it feels like it takes them a while to get to. That's a large field. And it feels like it's so much work to finally get a scoring opportunity also. Anyway, Well done. Evan, back to you to wrap things up.
That's that. And that's RinkWise. A lot of stuff coming your way in the next couple weeks, MIAA and prep. I'm Evan Marinofsky. That's Patrick Donnelly. We will see you at the rinks.